For over 1,000 years, one city stood as a bastion of civilization, a bridge between East and West, the heart of an empire that refused to die. This is the story of Constantinople, the queen of cities, and its dramatic final stand. Imagine a city so legendary, its walls were said to be built by angels. For centuries, Constantinople, the capital of the Byzantine Empire, had weathered countless storms, repelling invaders with its formidable defenses and the legendary Greek fire. It was the center of Orthodox Christianity, a treasure trove of art, knowledge, and relics from the ancient world. But by the mid-15th century, the once mighty empire was a shadow of its former self. A small island in a vast sea controlled by the rising Ottoman Empire. Enter Sultan Mehmed II. Young, ambitious, and brilliant, he was consumed by one desire: to conquer Constantinople. It wasn't just about territory. It was about fulfilling an ancient prophecy and cementing his legacy as a great conqueror. He gathered a massive army, said to be over 80,000 strong, equipped with the most advanced weaponry of the age. The centerpiece of his arsenal was a terrifying new invention, the super cannon. Forged by a Hungarian engineer named Orban, these were behemoths of bronze, capable of hurling massive stone balls over a mile. One cannon, nicknamed the Basilica, was so enormous it required 60 oxen and hundreds of men to move. Its roar was said to shake the very foundations of the earth, and its purpose was singular: to shatter the unbreakable walls of Constantinople. Facing this overwhelming force was a city in decline. The last Byzantine emperor, Constantine XI Leonovos, was a brave and noble leader, but his resources were tragically scarce. He could only muster a tiny army of about 7,000 defenders, a mix of his own loyal soldiers, Genoese mercenaries, and courageous Venetian sailors. The city's population had dwindled, and the once bustling streets were quiet, yet their spirit remained unbroken. They trusted in their faith, their emperor, and the legendary Theodosian walls that had protected them for a millennium. On April 6, 1453, the siege began. The air, once filled with the sound of church bells and market chatter, was now pierced by the deafening thunder of Mehmed's cannons. Day after day, the giant stone balls smashed against the ancient walls. The defenders worked tirelessly, patching up the breaches with stones, barrels of earth, and wooden barricades under the cover of darkness. They fought with a desperation born of love for their city. For weeks, the siege was a brutal stalemate. The Ottomans launched wave after wave of attacks, but the defenders, led by the emperor himself and a valiant Genoese commander named Giovanni Giustiniani, repelled them each time. The Byzantine navy even managed to win a small but significant victory against the Ottoman fleet. Boosting the city's morale, it seemed, for a moment, that a miracle was possible. But Mehmed was not just a brute, he was a strategic genius. He knew the city's weakness was the Golden Horn, a natural harbor protected by a massive iron chain that stretched across its mouth, preventing enemy ships from entering. So he devised an audacious plan. In one of the most incredible feats of military engineering in history, Mehmed ordered his ships to be dragged overland, across a hill, and into the Golden Horn, completely bypassing the chain. Imagine the defenders waking one morning to the sight of Ottoman warships suddenly floating in their supposedly secure harbor. The psychological blow was devastating. The city was now surrounded on all sides, its supply lines cut, its hope dwindling. The relentless cannon fire continued, day and night, wearing down the walls and the spirits of the men and women inside. Cracks began to appear not just in the stone, but in their resolve. As the siege dragged into its 7th week, signs and omens were seen everywhere. A lunar eclipse was interpreted as a dark prophecy. A thick, unnerving fog enveloped the city for days. And then a strange light was seen flickering around the dome of the Hagia Sophia, the grandest cathedral in Christendom. Some saw it as the Holy Spirit abandoning the city, a final, terrible sign that their end was near. Mehmed, sensing the defenders' exhaustion, prepared for one final, massive assault. He offered the emperor a chance to surrender. He could leave the city with his people and his treasures, unharmed. But Constantine refused. He declared he would rather die than give up his city and his faith. He knew what was coming. On the night of May 28th, a somber mood fell over Constantinople. The emperor gathered his commanders and gave a final heartbreaking speech, urging them to fight to the last for their God, their families, and their home. Then, he went to the Hagia Sophia. In a moment of incredible unity, Orthodox and Catholic Christians, who had been divided for centuries, took communion together one last time. It was a final poignant prayer in a city on the brink of oblivion. In the pre-dawn hours of May 29, 1453, the final assault began. The roar of cannons, drums, and trumpets was overwhelming as tens of thousands of Ottoman soldiers charged the battered walls. The first waves were irregular troops, sent to exhaust the defenders. The second wave was more disciplined. But still, the defenders held on, fighting with superhuman courage. Giustiniani and the emperor were everywhere, rallying their men, fighting on the ramparts. But then, disaster struck. Giustiniani was gravely wounded by a cannon shot. His evacuation from the front line caused a panic among the Genoese troops. At the same time, a small group of Ottoman soldiers discovered a small, unlocked gate, a poster known as the Kirkoporta. They poured through, raised the Ottoman flag on a nearby tower, and suddenly, the tide turned, chaos erupted. Seeing the enemy flag within the city, the defenders' lines broke. The elite janissaries stormed through the main breaches in the walls. The fight moved from the walls into the streets. Emperor Constantine XI, seeing that all was lost, threw off his imperial regalia and charged into the fray, disappearing into the sea of fighting, a true Roman emperor to the very end. His body was never definitively found. The city fell. For 3 days, it was subjected to pillaging, as was the custom of the age. But when Sultan Mehmed finally rode into the city, he was struck by its melancholy beauty. He famously rode his horse into the magnificent Hagia Sophia, marveling at its scale. He ordered an end to the destruction and declared that the great cathedral would be converted into a mosque, a symbol of his new conquest. The fall of Constantinople was more than just the end of the city. It was the end of an era. The Byzantine Empire, the last remnant of the Roman Empire, was gone forever. The news sent shockwaves across Europe, sparking fear and a renewed call for crusades that never materialized. It also had a profound, unintended consequence. Fleeing Byzantine scholars brought with them the priceless knowledge of ancient Greece and Rome to Italy, helping to fuel the burgeoning Renaissance. The city, once Constantinople, was reborn as Istanbul, the new capital of the mighty Ottoman Empire. It would once again become a great center of power, art, and culture, a crossroads of civilizations. But the memory of the 1,000-year Christian empire and its dramatic, heroic last stand would echo through the corridors of history forever. Thank you for watching. If you found this story as fascinating as I do, please hit that like button, subscribe to our channel for more journeys into the past, and let us know in the comments which historical event you'd like us to explore next. For more than 1,000 years, its walls had never fallen. Empires rose, kings died, and the world itself changed, yet Constantinople stood, the shining crown of the Byzantine world. Until one morning in 1453, when the unthinkable happened. When the city of God met the fury of men. They called it the Second Rome, a fortress between worlds, guarding the bridge between East and West. Behind its mighty Theodosian walls lived the last heirs of Rome, few in number, yet unyielding in spirit. The year was 1453. Emperor Constantine XI Palaiologos ruled what was left of Byzantium. Once an empire that had ruled the Mediterranean, now it was a single city surrounded by enemies. But on the horizon came a storm. Sultan Mehmed II, barely 21 years old, with a vision of conquest that would echo through eternity. The young sultan brought with him an army unlike any seen before: 80,000 soldiers, war elephants, elite janissaries, and the basilica cannon, a monstrous weapon forged to break the unbreakable. Each shot shook the earth, each echo was a death knell for an empire. Inside the walls, only 7,000 defenders stood ready. Greeks, Venetians, Genoese united not by race or wealth, but by faith and desperation. For weeks, the cannons thundered day and night. The walls of Constantinople cracked and crumbled, but still they held. The defenders poured boiling oil on the invaders, fired flaming arrows into the siege towers, and prayed under the golden domes of Hagia Sophia. Meanwhile, Mehmed's engineers dug tunnels beneath the walls, but each one was found and destroyed. The siege was a chess match between genius and faith. May 28, 1453. Inside the city, the people gathered for one last prayer. Emperor Constantine XI stood among them, not as a ruler, but as a man ready to die with his people. He turned to his soldiers and said, "The hour has come. God will not forget us. Let us die with honor." Outside, Mehmed's army prepared for the final assault. Torches lit the horizon like stars. Drums thundered across the night. And then the cannons roared. Before dawn, the Ottoman flag rose over the shattered walls. The gates burst open. The city that had defied the world for 1,000 years had fallen. The emperor fought until the end, his body never found. Legend says he turned to marble, waiting for the day he would rise again. As the sun rose, Mehmed entered the Hagia Sophia. He dismounted his horse, spread his cloak upon the floor, and bowed to the ground. The ancient cathedral became a mosque, and a new empire was born. The fall of Constantinople ended an era, but it also began another. It marked the end of the Middle Ages and the dawn of a new world. From the ashes of Byzantium rose the Ottoman Empire, and from the ruins of a fallen city, a legend that still haunts history, the day Rome truly fell. For some, it was the end of the world. For others, the birth of empire.